For this next segment, we're going to define your business type. Let's take a second. I want to share a quote with you. It states that the business model is also known as the business type. The chosen business model determines the approach the business owner will take to earn revenues and influence the resources that they will need to purchase or to purchase needed resources and also to pursue their goals. Ultimately, the business model defines what business we are in. I'll say that again. The business model defines what business we are in. Ultimately, the industry that you're in, let's say it's the restaurant industry, let's say it's in the hair salon industry, it's in the accounting industry, legal industry, whatever industry you're in will bring to you a set of unique customers, but also establishes some constraints that will be part of that industry, meaning constraints to your business with regards to cost, maybe with regards to how you can actually price. So you need to understand that going in to that particular industry. And if you do that, then you'll be in a better position to make appropriate decisions to help your business succeed and ultimately be profitable. So what we're going to do is spend some time now introducing you to this concept of the business model and then tying that concept to your financial statements, which ultimately helps you to do financial forecasting. So I'm going to show you a chart right now that shows you the three business types or the three business models. Let's take a look at them. As you see on this slide, we have three business models or three business types. They are services, retail, and manufacturing. So let's take a look at services first. The picture shows a restaurant. Restaurants are really, really unique. Restaurants have a service component, and they also have a little bit of a manufacturing component to it because they're actually preparing a meal. But they are considered to be in the service category because ultimately someone's coming to you and asking you to do something for them. In this case, prepare a meal for them. So what happens on the service side? Let's take a look at it. You're going to hire staff. You're going to purchase inventory. In this case, it's going to be food ingredients. You're going to prepare the meals. You're going to service the customers. You're going to take their order. You're going to deliver the meal to them. There's going to be some cashiering involved because I need to collect cash. I need to collect money from them in order to earn revenue. I'm probably going to have to train my staff, and I need to clean my facilities in order to stay compliant with either city or state regulations. So listen to what I just described. I described a typical restaurant, and that's the key. A typical restaurant has to perform these activities in order to be perceived as a restaurant, in order to be able to do the work of a restaurant. There's going to be some unique activities that are associated with a restaurant. Now let's say it's just a service company, such as an accounting firm or a law firm. Well, in this case, I'm not going to have an inventory issue. I'm not going to be purchasing food. In that case, I shouldn't have an inventory cost when I think about my law firm. I will be servicing customers, so we have a common link there. I may have to hire staff, like an administrative staff. There's going to be some cashiering involved. Somehow, I do have to get it paid. So either I have people pay me online or they pay me in cash. I probably have to train my staff as well to help them understand how I do business as an attorney. I have to clean my facilities, but you know what? I don't have to clean my office as often. Maybe I'll hire a janitorial team to come in once a week, where when I'm running a restaurant, I got to do this daily. So see the subtle differences, both for service companies, but they have different activities that are associated with them that are part of the business. Let's take a look at a retailer. A retailer in this case, let's use Target as our example. I'm sure most of you have walked into a Target store. I want you to close your eyes for a minute and imagine what you see when you go into Target. You'll walk through the door, and to your left, you'll see the cash. Either left or right, you'll see the cashiers. And then you'll see the rest of the store behind the cashiers. You'll see the clothing, you'll see the appliances, the toys, and so on. So how does a retailer work? They hire staff also. They have to advertise. Well, we could also say the restaurant has to advertise too. They purchase inventory. What is the inventory they're purchasing? Clothing, toys, furniture. They have to merchandise the inventory. What does that mean? Well, when the items arrive in the warehouse, they can't just sit in a box, and the customer shouldn't be expected to walk to the warehouse and cut a box open. What has to happen is that the staff has to pull items out of the box and put them on the shelf. We call that merchandising. There's going to be cashiering again. We got to train the staff, got to clean the facility. Similar to the restaurant, but there were a couple of extra steps here. We have to merchandise in this case. We have to do probably a lot more advertising because there's a lot of retailers out there selling clothes. So I want to make sure I spend a lot on advertising. Their expenses are going to be a little bit higher than the restaurant, or it could be significantly higher than the restaurant. Let's look at manufacturing. That can be anybody nowadays, but the best example to show you, we're just showing you a car manufacturer because you can relate to that. They hire staff, either union workers or non-union. They purchase raw material. In this case, they got to buy steel and plastic in order to build the cars. They got to have a warehouse to store all that steel and all that plastic. They then have to do what we call in manufacturing processing. They have to bring everything together in order to actually build the car. So they got to build the car. After they built the car, there's going to be another warehouse or some other storage area they have to have available to park the car until the car can be shipped. And oh, by the way, they got to ship the cars to the car dealership, another cost, right? And then there's going to be some training involved. They're going to have to train the people who actually work inside the manufacturing facility. What do you hear? More and more line items of cost, more and more line items of responsibilities and activities. That's what business modeling is all about, is that once you understand the business you're in, you can then take a look at other businesses that do what you do to make sure you are capturing all that you need to capture in terms of cost or even revenue opportunities in your forecast. So you're not walking into forecasting blindly. You want to use the best practices of those who have been in business for a while and sort of mimic them or mirror them as you start to build out your forecast. So our next slide here is called a comparison of common operating expenses. So when we look at service, we have salary and wages, we have administrative, there's probably going to be a lease payment, paying the landlord, some utility costs, insurance costs. These are just some of your low-hanging fruit costs. There could be others, but these are the ones that people think of commonly. Then we have retailer. There's going to be a cost of goods sold. For those of you in the retail business, you should know what this means. This is the item, or this is the expense item, represents the amount of money that you pay to your wholesaler in order to bring items into your store so you can have available for sale. I expect to see that line item on every income statement for a retailer. I don't expect to see that on the income statement for, let's say, a law office, because they're typically not working with wholesalers. There's going to be some administrative expense, some lease expense, payroll, utilities, and depreciation. Depreciation, for those of you who've never had accounting, that means the cost associated with buying equipment. Eventually, that equipment gets old, and we try to estimate the decline of a piece of equipment, meaning the decline in value of that piece of equipment. Manufacturer, cost of raw materials, administrative costs, general labor, utilities, your sales, of course, that's going to be your revenue coming in, transportation, depreciation, quality assurance. In manufacturing, quality assurance is a big area. We're trying to make sure that what we're producing is of the highest quality and is consistent with what we've made in the past. And then, of course, there's going to be some interest expense, because when you're running manufacturing, you typically have to borrow a lot of money to pay for the equipment that you need. So there should be some line item on there for interest expense, or what we call loan expense. Again, as you see, 3 different business types, all of them a little bit different when we think about the expenses, and that should be natural to you, and you should expect that. So I think sometimes people will say, I'm running this business, and why did I incur this cost? I didn't expect to have this cost. Well, the question is, why didn't you expect it? Is it one of the normal expenses of your business? And you should be ready to account for that. All right, this next slide just says, okay, where are you going with this, Adam? Is that ultimately you have financial records that are going to be vital to you or going to be important to you when it comes to producing your forecast. You need to have your income statement. You need to have your balance sheet. You need to have your cash flow statement. We talk about these in another workshop, in another presentation. So take a look at that presentation so you have a better sense of what these statements are all about. But just in short, the income statement shows your revenues, expenses, and profit. Your balance sheet shows you the equipment that you have, the money that you have in the bank, the amount of debt that you have. And then your cash flow statement is just showing you money that's coming into your business, where it's coming from, and also where it is going. So let's spend a little time on the income statement, because the income statement ultimately is going to be the statement that you use to do your forecast. It's the easiest one to work with. So it has three components to it. It has revenues, it has expenses, and it has what we call profit. Hopefully you have profit, or if you have a loss, hopefully you won't have a loss for too long. So essentially the income statement communicates your revenue that is earned. And it also represents, we like to say, the quality of your management, which means when you make the appropriate decisions, you keep your costs low and your revenues high and you make a profit. If your management decisions are sometimes a little off, you end up with higher expenses, you end up with lower profits. So that's what the income statement is really telling you. It's talking about the revenues that you've earned and also the quality of your management decisions. Here's what it looks like. It has revenues at the top. In the middle, it typically has your operating expenses. At the bottom, it has your net income or your profit. What you want to do when you're forecasting, especially if you've been in business for several years, you want to have someone produce this income statement for you. You want to have someone check it for accuracy, because as I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to use this financial record or this historic data in order to do your forecast. So you want to make sure your numbers are correct and they're right. The best way to do that is to print up your income statement, have it in front of you, lay them out side by side, each and every, in this case, you pull out, let's say if you've been in business for 5 years, you lay out all 5 of them side by side so you can see them face to face to make sure that they're accurate and they're showing you the information you need to see. Also, you see that the income statement will show you some of your commitments. Primarily what it's going to show you is that you have some debt out there, right? So maybe you did take out a loan, like a line of credit. It's going to show that because you have an interest expense. If you're renting, it's going to show that. That's an obligation. So it's going to show the amount of money that you're paying for rent. If you're renting equipment, it's going to show that. It not only shows your day-to-day cost or your monthly cost, it will also show some of the commitments, long-term commitments that you made for the business as well. We've covered a lot in this segment. We've talked about the business model. We've talked about the fact that the business model includes 3 areas: services, retailers, as well as manufacturers. We've also discussed the fact that each model type has different components. There's different activities that relate to each one of those models. And because of that, your income statement in particular is going to look different, because you're going to have different expense categories depending on who you are. A service company will have fewer than a retailer. A retailer will have fewer expense categories than a manufacturer. So it's important for you to know that, and it's important for you to take that into account when you're preparing your financial forecast. So you want to have good records, you want to have solid, accurate income statements so it can help you understand your numbers and actually understand your expenses, and also understand the history you've had around generating revenue. So thank you. So now we're going to move to our next segment, which is forecasting benchmarks and assumptions.